Welcome to Well Coached, a podcast about how people, sales, profit, and self can transform your business. I'm your host, Chris Weinberg, and I have helped hundreds of entrepreneurs get into their highest productivity zone and become corporate enough to succeed. Let's get into today's episode. Today, we're going to talk about the complexity and the difficulty of making the right hire. And I will tell you, I think it is the most difficult thing we do as leaders, as business owners, as managers. Hiring is really tough. And you think about when you came up with your idea to go into business, or if you're inside of a business and you're progressing along the way, very few of us said, I want to get into business to hire people. Unless, of course, you're an HR company or in HR, or that's your chosen field. The rest of us are like, holy moly, I've got to now start bringing people on because I've got some traction in what I'm doing. And we're terrible at it. It is not a natural skill set. Hiring is not a natural skill set. And here's the difficulty, the first difficulty I see. When it's time to start hiring people, whether it's your own business or inside of a business that you're a part of a team, it's usually out of desperation, all right? We've normally gotten the business to a certain point to where we can't do it on our own, or the team needs to expand. So typically there is a need to bring someone on that may outweigh sensibilities at the time of hiring. And here's what I mean by that. Whenever we start interviewing people, we are ready to hire. And typically the folks on the other side of the table are ready to be hired. Therefore, we're seeing each other in our best light. As the interviewer, we may be finding subconscious ways to fall in love with the person that we're talking to because we need the person so badly that we're overlooking things on the resume that may say axe murderer, right? Or even if it says, in my past life, I was an axe murderer, we may say, well, have you gotten past that point in your life? Because we're so desperate to bring people on, we may be looking at the candidate from a 360 view because we want them. We want them in, and they're also putting their best foot forward at the time. So most of us can have war stories about making the wrong hire and the implications that can have inside of the business. Oftentimes, one of the biggest implications it has, or one of the biggest problems, is that most of us are built to be conflict averse or to try to find the good in people all the time. When we bring in a bad hire, and we may recognize it right away, but oftentimes we don't do anything about it right away. So we allow that person to survive inside the organization. And what happens? All of a sudden, cancer cells start growing and start spreading. It only takes one bad apple to start sinking the ship. And the importance of hiring right and the benefit of hiring right helps us avoid situations where we go, I got a bad egg in here and now I got to do something about it. So the complexity of hiring has unbelievable consequences downstream if you hire incorrectly and don't recognize it and do something about it. Now, we use all kinds of things to hire people, right? What are some of the guardrails? Obviously, skill set is a big deal, right? Hiring someone for their specific skill set is key critical for sure. So let's assume that we know how to identify that. We know how to identify that the person knows how to make widgets the right way because we've seen them make widgets. I'm going to use an analogy here that unless you got a little bit of age on you, you may not know. But back in the 80s and 90s, there were a couple of restaurant concepts out there that were really booming. And one was called TGI Fridays and one was called Bennigan's, right? And here's a scenario that can happen and does happen often in businesses. I'm at TGI Fridays and I'm the manager there. And I need servers. So I find me a Bennigan's person because I eat at Bennigan's and I see that Henry there is the best server they've got. He's amazing. He does all the Bennigan's stuff the right way. And I say, Henry, will you please come work at us at TGI Fridays? I got a great opportunity here and we're busy as heck and come over here and work. And Henry agrees to it. Now I'm so relieved that Henry has come to work at TGI Fridays. And I say, Henry, welcome to the team. Go get them, Tiger. That's your section to go take care of these people. You're going to be their server and these 5 tables. Well, all of a sudden, Henry starts goofing up, and 2 or 3 days into it, none of the team members like Henry. I'm starting to question my decision making on about hiring, how I hired Henry. He's just not doing things the Friday's way. As a matter of fact, he wears green into the environment. Well, we don't wear green at Fridays. We wear red and white stripes. But guess what? I hired this guy for his skill set, which he demonstrated to me. I saw him do it at Bennigan's, but now I bring him into Fridays, and I'm so happy that he's here that I just turn him loose, and off and running he goes. Well, guess which habits he brings? He brings the habits from Bennigan's, because that's where he was taught great performance. That's where he built his skill set. We brought him into our new environment, and I did not train him. I did not say, here's how we do it at Fridays. We wear red and white stripes. We approach tables in 30 seconds. We offer these types of things to the guest. I just turned him loose. Now what do I have all of a sudden? This is a Ken Blanchard famous quote. We have a winner that is disguised as a loser, right? We brought in someone who was great at their skill set. I watched him do it at Bennigan's. We dumped him into our environment without any training, and all of a sudden we go, what's wrong with this guy? Henry's no good. Not Henry's fault. We have a winner disguised as a loser because we did not show Henry what success looks like at Fridays. Translate that into your own environment. We go and hire someone for either demonstrated skill set, or they talked us into it, or we saw it on their resume, but we're making an assumption that they're bringing a skill set into the organization. Now they get going inside of the organization, but we haven't shown them what good performance looks like inside of our organization. So that what they do is rely on their past experiences, which is completely normal, which may align with our company values and system, or we may all of a sudden have a winner who's now disguised as a loser. Not that person's fault. So the next part about the complexity of making a great hire is making sure that hire knows what they're walking into and what great performance looks like. How do we do that? Well-defined job descriptions. What are the responsibilities? What are the required skill sets? What are the expected outcomes? So often when we hire people, we don't tell them what the expected outcome is, or we don't show them what good performance looks like. My bet is that most of you have seen the movie The Karate Kid. And if you haven't seen it, just a quick synopsis is this kid's getting his butt kicked by the bullies, and he's tired of getting his butt kicked. But he doesn't know how to fight. So he gets lucky one day. He finds this guy, Miyagi, who happens to be a great karate teacher and expert at karate. And he says, come here, kid, I'm going to teach you how to fight. Now, I am really taking liberties with the script here. But at the end of the day, what Miyagi does is teach this kid how to defend himself. And he gets very specific. Wax on, you may remember the wax on, wax off, paint the fence, right? Very certain movements as he's building the skill set for this kid not to get beat up anymore. He's showing the kid what good performance looks like. So often when we bring people into our organization, we don't do that. And then we're just left for hope. And we got that winner's disguised as a loser, and we end up, the cycle repeats itself. We either allow them to be in the environment and do terrible things to our business because they don't know any better, or we end up firing them and the whole cycle starts again. And then you hear all the time, you just can't find good help these days. Nobody's willing to work. I do not believe that. I believe fully that most people want to do the right thing if they know what the right thing is. It is the job of the leader to say nonstop what the right thing is. That starts at the hiring process with a well-defined job description. A well-defined job description should be difficult for you to write because it should require thought. And that thought should lead to, what does a home run look like? What does success look like? And then before that, what are the steps to get us to that point? So now we've talked about the complexity of hiring, skill set, how to identify that. Demonstrated competence would be a way to do that, whether that's assessments in the interview process, whether that's you've seen them do that in another job, or they have great referrals. And then we've talked about well-defined job descriptions. When they come into your environment, what is it exactly they need to do so that you can high-five them and say, bingo, you nailed it. The last part of the complexity of hiring is you need an outside opinion. When we're hiring, like I mentioned earlier, we're usually so interested in hiring that our standards may subconsciously drop. Conversely, or in addition to, the person on the other side of the table is also putting their best foot forward. So if they're smart, they're going to bend their answers, even if it's subconscious, to match what you need to hear. So bring in some other things. What are the other things? Multiple interviews with not just you. Maybe a day in the life of, to see how the person interacts and just for them to decide if it's a good fit too. And then, as we've mentioned in other episodes, assessments. For us, we use the DISC profile and EQ. It gives us an immediate read on what we're bringing into the environment from a personality standpoint. It's not measuring hard skills or hard. That's for you to figure out in other ways, like we mentioned, day in the life, referrals, eyewitness, demonstrated competence, those type of things. But personality assessments will let you know how the person's going to show up in the environment. And while you may not use that as a pass-fail to say you're hired, it will allow you to know, how do I get on this person's level to communicate with them effectively when they do come into the environment? So the wrap-up of all of that is hiring people is difficult, arguably the most difficult thing that you'll ever do if you do it right. As the leader, you're the only one who can paint the vision correctly. Now, you may do that verbally, you may do that in demonstrated competence by walking around and managing, but you also need to do that with well-defined written job descriptions that are the anchor that you and your new team member can go back to measure performance along the way. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.